Hey guys, welcome to the Leadership to Wealth podcast. I'm your host, Neil D'Souza, and we have a great guest for you today. Our guest today, he loves to add value to others through a couple of things. First of all, he does syndication of private placement real estate investments. He loves to do keynote speaking, and he's the host of an award-winning business podcast called Elevate. Now, his core belief is that human beings were designed to go big. So today's show, we've got co-founder and managing partner of CF Capital, Tyler Chesser. Tyler, welcome to the show.
Neil, what a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me. It's great to be with you.
Did I get that all right?
I think you got it right, man. There's nothing that I would say that you did incorrectly there. What I most appreciated was your energy. I feel like I'm pumped up. I'm ready to go now. So yeah, it was a great job.
I got to ask you a couple questions here. You're from Louisville, right?
That's right.
Louisville? All right. So just to kick us off, Kentucky Derby, Kentucky Fried Chicken, or the Kentucky Wildcats?
Oh, I love this question. So definitely not fried chicken. It's not my thing. It's so interesting too, by the way, if you think about KFC in Kentucky, it's nowhere near as big as it is in India or China or all around the world. It's unbelievable. It's massive all over the world, but not in really the States or even in the state of Kentucky, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
So the Kentucky Derby is obviously in my opinion, and well regarded as the greatest 2 minutes in sports. It is an amazing event where really the whole world descends on Louisville, Kentucky and Churchill Downs. But man, it's almost March Madness, baby. The Kentucky Wildcats are coming in hot too. So that's my vote.
Yes. Okay. But now between the Wildcats and the Cardinals, is there another issue there?
Oh, there's an issue for sure, but the issue has been settled. I think that's what we'll say. It's been completely settled. And the Louisville Cardinals, they've tried, and I think they're kind of hurting right now. So the Kentucky Wildcats are really where the focus should be.
Yes. I thought, what better question to get you started? I've heard you talking about problems as a gift. And I believe you actually, on your podcast, you actually dedicated an entire episode just to talking about that. And I thought it was so fitting that we got right in, and I had all sorts of problems. So Tyler, come on, talk to us, help us understand this mindset game, and how are problems really a gift?
Well, it is so important for entrepreneurs and really just human beings in general to understand the power of their mindset and their perception. Yeah. And the first thing that I'll say is that we can either be a victim in our life, or we can be the victor on the way to greater victory. Yeah. And really what we're talking about in terms of recognizing that problems are gifts is really the foundation of that mindset and of that identity. Because you can either be a victim and you can get crushed by problems, or you can be a victor and be anti-fragile and get better when problems show up. And so what does that mean, right? I'm an investor. I'm a real estate investor. I'm an entrepreneur. We run an organization where we invest in large apartment communities across our region. Yeah. And frankly, every single day we are encountered with a set of problems, and in many cases, growing problems and challenges. And so when we encounter these problems, what a lot of times we find is that if we have the perspective that there's a hidden gift in every single problem, and that creates an opportunity for a greater benefit in the future, we start to look for that, and we start to say, oh, this is exciting. We got a problem. So instead of saying, wow, this problem feels overwhelming, and oh my gosh, we have a lot of problems, it's like, woe is me, I feel sorry for myself. We start to say, okay, well, let's look for the gift. And how does that manifest? It typically manifests in, first of all, our energetic approach to say, you know what, there's a solution for every problem. And in that solution, there's some sort of experience or some sort of gift that we receive, right? A lot of times the gift in a problem is the experience as we navigate through it. But a lot of times we have to pivot as entrepreneurs. We have to pivot through problems. And we say, you know what? We're meeting a brick wall. Like behind me, I have a brick wall. If anybody's watching this, you can see the brick wall behind me. Sometimes to get to our outcomes or to our goals, we've either got to go around the brick wall, we've got to go above it, or we've got to bust through it. Or perhaps maybe it's 3 brick walls deep and you can't bust through it. And so you need to take a pivot. You need to go in a different direction. And so this mindset is really a foundation of being anti-fragile. If any of your listeners have read the book Anti-Fragile by Nassim Taleb, you understand that when you encounter challenge, you get stronger. And so, it is such a foundational practice. And, one of the things too that I'm a huge fan of and believer in is that life happens for us and not to us. When we recognize that life is happening for us and our circumstances are happening for us to make us stronger, to give us the experience, to give us the tools, to give us the ability to strengthen our creativity and our resourcefulness. By the way, it's never a matter of resources. It's always a matter of resourcefulness. So when we look at a problem, we say, all right, first of all, there's a gift here. Second of all, what can I do to get creative to find the outcome or to get to the other side of this? Who needs to be involved in this? What other resources do I need to bring in? So that's a few of the things that I would say, but I really think that this is a foundational practice, especially for people who are looking to build and grow their wealth, because frankly, the pathway to that is filled with problems. And so you can either look at it and say, wow, that sucks. I'm a victim, or you can say, that's exciting. And I'm going to grow as a result. I'm going to become this next version of myself. I'm going to transform, and I'm going to bring other people along with me. So that was a pretty long-winded response there, but does that all make sense?
Absolutely. I actually think that what you're saying is completely correct. And I think oftentimes people miss that simple secret that in the problems is the opportunity. And it's the real reason that people run away from those things, because it looks like problems. And all they can think about is the problems. Meanwhile, when we see the problems, we realize that's where the money is. That's where it's going to show up. And obviously, we're talking about financial wealth and stuff like that in that regards. But it's true in any area of your life, right? Like you have something happen on the home front, which I just had we had some health challenges at home, and in that problem was the gift, like you were saying, because we got a chance to talk more deeply about our relationship with the kids and all this and things were said that may not have been said in the regular ongoing of life. And so you had me at hello on that one.
Also Napoleon Hill said something about this in Think and Grow Rich. And he said, and I hope I don't butcher this, but every adversity comes with it a seed of equivalent or greater benefit. And you almost follow some wisdom. If any of your listeners are saying, look, I get it, I understand that, I haven't fully seen that, what I would say is embrace this thought process and recognize that wisdom is giving you some guidance here. And if you can start to embrace this, not only personally, but professionally, I think you'll be really, really surprised to see the compound effect of how you're interacting with your problems. You'll start to see things that you didn't see before, because when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. That's a Wayne Dyer quote, and one that's like, oh my goodness, I'm ready.
Yes. Okay. But hang on here. I've got to ask this question. I see it over and over again. We talk about this. I do as well, embracing the mindset. Why don't people embrace the mindset? Why don't they take that on? Have you solved that question?
This is interesting. Believe it or not, I was thinking about kind of this morning in the shower, and I was actually thinking about, because we had a meeting with our marketing team yesterday, and we were talking about keywords, and we're growing our website and things like that, and we're wanting to continue to grow our reach in terms of our expansion on our investor network, right? And so one of the things that we think about, is how are we going to be stumbled upon in the internet? And we look at, well, what are people in our sort of target persona thinking about, and what are they searching? And a lot of the stuff that people are searching, investors are searching for, are basically tools, tactics, tips, and strategies, right? Everybody wants the new tool, tactic, tip, and strategy because look, I understand that. I mean, success leaves clues. So model success, find what works and implement that. But I think what a lot of people don't realize is that if you don't fix this foundation between your ears, it doesn't matter how many tools, tips, tactics, strategies you have, you're going to stop when the problem is you're encountered with the problem, or you're in your head about I'm not worthy for this, or I don't deserve more success. I mean, so on and so forth. And so I don't think people are willing to give as much credit to this identity and this internal dialogue that it really deserves. But I think that the highest performers recognize that that's the difference. There's a 2 millimeter shift. When we look at problems as a gift, that's a shift. It's very small, it's very minute, but then everything changes. And that's really only scratching the surface of what we're talking about here in terms of mindset. But I believe that the highest performers realize that. But I think the people who are maybe middle of the pack, they're just looking for more tips, tactics, tools, and strategies. The problem is we have unlimited access to information, right? I think the information age is almost over. It's like there's so much information. There's an overabundance of information. But people don't understand how to interact with that information and also distill it into wisdom. And I think that there's a big misunderstanding in terms of what's going to help you get to the next level. And maybe that's what's missing. I'm not sure, but I was actually thinking about this morning. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I think we we kind of came around to the same thing. Where you see all of these different things that ultimately stop people, but when it comes down to it, it's never really the economics, the obstacles in the road, not having money, any of these things. It always comes down to this, because you realize that none of those things really matter. You can find a way around any one of those if you're using this. Yeah.
No, and I just wanted to add real quickly, people are searching, like the biggest search term in our space right now is inflation, right? So they're looking for external issues that are causing what they think are impeding their progress or their growth. And I think about inflation or interest rates. These are the things that people are searching for. And I'm okay with that, because I think you should be aware of what's happening and you should be dialed in terms of trends and being able to anticipate, especially as an investor. It's very important. But it shows me that people are dialed into the external things and they're looking for, well, I'm not able to do it because of inflation, or I'm not able to do it because of these rising interest rates. And it's almost like they're looking for an alibi. So anyway.
And my listeners have heard this story. When I first got into real estate, I actually read every real estate book I could find, and it took me about 2 years of reading until I literally couldn't find any more books. At Chapters, at the library, I just couldn't find any more books. Now we're going back a while, so I still hadn't really learned the internet all that well. Otherwise, I would have had so much more info. But I went through, read all this stuff, and then I realized, okay, I just have to do something. And the one thing that I remember helping me make that leap was I've done all this studying, I've got all this knowledge, and I'm still going to do something wrong. Just at some point, something's going to happen that's going to be a problem. And so if I'm okay with that, I've done everything else up to this point that I can think to do. Great, let's go get into it. And I got into it, and I got to tell you, I was freaking out until I ran into my first problem, which was scheduling. One of the contractors didn't show up, and it was going to put the whole timeline off. And I was like, here it is. Here's the problem. Here's the thing. And I thought, can I solve this? And sure enough, I was able to figure that out, work out a couple of things. And it gave me such a moment of peace and strength to be able to have the problem and go, okay, this is why people don't do this. Now I get to move forward. And it actually, I don't know, you tell Tyler, I've found that sometimes it can get a little addicting sometimes.
I think so. And what you just talked about is it's almost like if you have the confidence to recognize, what, I am going to figure it out. I am going to encounter problems. And oh yeah, like even if I do, like problems are gifts. So like that's good. It's a win-win-win. Like I'm going to win no matter what. And I think if you go back to it, it's like you're not able to move forward unless you have this recognition that problems are gifts and that problems are inevitable. And by the way, every problem has a solution. Once you start to compound all of these thought processes and then you see it in action, you gain that confidence. And I think confidence is a huge component to success. You've got to feel successful. You've got to look at yourself and say, you know what? I've proven that I can do this before. I've proven that I can overcome challenges. I've proven that I can be resourceful and that I have creativity and that when I encounter things, I'm willing to pivot. I'm willing to adapt and be nimble. And I think as you give yourself the permission to move forward and embrace and encounter those challenges, you just get better at it. You get quicker. You get, it doesn't really overwhelm you. I can think back to one of the first deals that I did. It was like the whole thing was riddled with problems. And frankly, I was probably a little naive going into it. And I'm looking around. It's like you said, I had contractor problems. I had tenant problems. I had payment issues. I had occupancy issues. And I'm like, whoa, I didn't anticipate all these problems. And so every little thing was like overwhelming. But then as I worked through it, and I started to scale more in my business, those problems seemed not nearly as insurmountable as they were. First of all, because, hey, I'd already overcome a certain component of this issue. But then I just started to say, you know what, let's embrace and let's find bigger problems, because if I find bigger problems, then that means I'm making more progress.
Yes. Well, I believe Tony Robbins, I heard him say that, you, in terms of how getting paid, he said the bigger the problems you solve, the more money you'll make. And most of us love to solve small problems. Because hey, look, I solved this, and we feel good, and we leave those bigger things out there, and we don't want to solve them, or we give them to other people to solve. Not that that's a bad thing in and of itself, but oftentimes, like when we outsource investing because we feel like we don't know, we don't understand money. So therefore and this is the vast majority of people, they give money elsewhere. And again, I'm not saying that that's bad, because building a team is hugely beneficial. But when you don't know anything about that area and you're afraid of it, that to me, that's a big issue.
Yeah, and Tony Robbins also said that your success is in direct proportion with the level of uncertainty that you can tolerate.
Hang on there, Tyler. Can you just repeat that again? That quote.
Absolutely, it's huge, and it's like if you can start to recognize the deep wisdom in this thought, everything can change. And this is almost like the graduate level of problems or gifts, right? Your success is in direct proportion to the level of uncertainty that you can willingly tolerate. But ultimately, what we're talking about is we're embracing larger and more complex issues. And as we do that, we solve more complex issues. We're bringing more value to the marketplace. Not only we're transforming ourselves, which is, in my opinion, a key to expanding your wealth. You've got to transform yourself. You've got to look within and say, what are those limiting beliefs that are holding me back? And starting to work on those things. What gaps do I have in my knowledge and my understanding in the marketplace? What is my skill set? What does my team look like? What does my strategy look like? And what type of uncertainty am I embracing and operating within? And as you start to do that, you gain more and more opportunities. You capture more and more opportunities to solve problems, which then creates value in the marketplace for you and your partners and all those kind of things. So I think that's important stuff.
Absolutely. I mean, you just hit on it right there. Something that really resonates for me is the level of uncertainty that you're willing to be with. That it is such a dynamic that you can't understate. If people could really understand that, hey, you need to be comfortable with a certain amount of uncertainty. And I think you've hit it a couple of times now, talking about problems as gifts, and this whole aspect of uncertainty. But it really allows us to go to the next level. Each level you move up is a different level of uncertainty. And even if you go from, you start out with a job and then you move to, you're a solopreneur, a self-employed, and you start there and then you're like, oh, but what if I hire somebody, this might happen, that might happen, I might not be able, right? And so oftentimes that's one of the big things that I've seen for self-employed is you don't want to go that next step of hiring someone because of that uncertainty. You've learned to control yourself, but now getting into the next area, right? And on and on. And so I think it's really powerful. And I got to ask this question around what you do specifically, Tyler, at CF Capital. How is it that you get into this level of uncertainty, and what is that problem that you solve for people that ultimately come to invest with you? People that are looking to get into these types of investments. What's that opportunity, that problem that you're able to solve?
Yeah. So one thing that I'll say on that is, people are looking for an opportunity to invest in real estate. I think that's widely understood today that, real estate is a great wealth building tool. It is a long-term wealth creation vehicle that has been tried and true for thousands and thousands of years. Yeah. And a lot of people who are also of that awareness, which I think is obviously the baseline piece here, they go out and they say, well, all right, well, how am I going to do this? Maybe I'm going to buy a single family home rental, create that rental, or maybe I'm going to, fix it up and then I'm going to rent it out, or maybe I'm going to sell it. And, they're thinking about this tool in that way, right? That's their entry point. Maybe they then graduate to a duplex or a fourplex, or maybe they buy a handful of houses, and over time they start to operate that rental portfolio, and it generates some income, and it's got some expenses and it's got some things to do. And as they grow and as they scale, they look around and say, wow, this is causing a lot of problems. This is causing a lot of ongoing issues that I have to address, that I have to lead, that I have to figure out. And by the way, a lot of my cash flow is eaten up by the repairs of the HVAC or the water heater and all these kind of things. And so the issue that people run into who believe in real estate as a wealth creation vehicle is, number one, the management side of things. Number two, the lack of scalability of that type of endeavor. And so the issue that we're solving for people is we are a best-in-class team, and we partner with the best property management companies. We partner with the best construction management companies. We have assembled the appropriate team from an accounting perspective, a communications perspective, and a legal perspective, and so on. And so what we do is we offer folks the opportunity to invest directly in real estate assets without having the burden of tenants, termites, and toilets. And so the problem that we're solving for them is we're giving them the exposure to this long-term wealth creation vehicle, and we're not putting them in the burden to where they have to become the expert. And by the way, it's very difficult to source these type of investments unless you are just living, eating, breathing, and sleeping this business. And so we find the best opportunities, and we source through hundreds of deals before we make one acquisition. We focus on large apartment communities, 200 to 300 unit properties that have, a leasing office, that have a swimming pool, a fitness center, a dog park, a playground, so on and so forth. All of the amenities that, we found in America that are highly in demand. And by the way, we have an entire staff on each one of our properties, a property manager, leasing manager, maintenance supervisor, maintenance technician, and just depending on the size of the asset. And so what we do is when we go into these properties, we transform them so that they optimize their income and they optimize their positioning in the marketplace. What we do is we identify underperforming assets, and we go in and we implement a specific business plan for that particular asset. So you may find a property that's undervalued in terms of the rents. And what we do is we go in there and we'll do some renovations. We'll, change the branding. We'll reposition the exterior or the common area or the amenities of that property. We'll put a best-in-class property management team in position to execute the day-to-day, the fundamentals of collecting and, repairing and doing all those things. And what we do is then we reposition the financial performance of that asset. And over time, we generate larger cash flow, which then is distributed with our investors on a monthly or quarterly basis, just depending on the particulars of that deal. And as we grow the value of that asset, we then either refinance or sell. And so you have capital appreciation as well. So the problem that we're mainly solving for investors is, number one, the access to these type of scalable investments that really offer not only the economies of scale and the spread between income and expenses that really doesn't exist on a smaller scale. But we also give them the opportunity of having exposure to these assets without having to deal with all the challenges that we deal with, because that's what we live, breathe, eat, and sleep. And so then they can go out and do their thing. And, you know, the core component to this is trust. I mean, they've got to trust that we have their best interests at heart. And the way that we really do that is by letting all of our investors know that we're in this for the long haul, and our relationships with them are transformational, not transactional. And if we do well by our investors, they're going to come back for another deal and maybe another deal after that. And by the way, one of the greatest, you know, compliments that we receive from our investors is, hey, you guys have done a great job. You should speak to my friend here, and, you know, we'd love for you to get to know him. So him or her. And so that's kind of what we do. And that's the problem that we're solving in the marketplace.
Yeah. I'll tell you what I really heard from what you shared there was, I thought, what is it that I would really key in there? How is Tyler really helping me in that? And what I really heard was the team, right? Like, could I try to get into finding these deals? Absolutely. Could I try to spend all of my time learning and immersing myself? Like you said, could I do that? The answer is yes. And could I build that team within a reasonable time frame so as to protect me from myself? And I thought, that's to me, that's sort of the key in there, that because I don't know if people realize it takes time to build up a team, to build, like you're talking about someone just having trust in you, but you've had to go about building those relationships and building trust with each one of those entities and forces, right? Whether it be lawyers, whether it be property managers, whether it be realtors, whether it be, you know, on and on and on. And you've assembled this whole team. You've gone through those ups and downs with those people to then be able to come up, and people can have that trust in you. And because we're in a world where everyone wants to sort of like cut out the middleman. They're like, oh, I'll go ahead and do it, you know, and I'll take that money. And you're thinking, but who's protecting you from yourself, you know, from what you don't know in that. And so I was like, oh my goodness, I think that's what really hit me. I don't know. That's what I heard out of what you just shared. You shared a lot of stuff, but that's what I really got, was that this powerhouse team that you've assembled.
I really like that. You know, I think the relationship aspect is a huge one, because we've been building, my partner and I and our team has been building these relationships with not only the sources for our deals, but also our team in many aspects for the greater part of the last decade. And, you know, for many years there, and you know this as an entrepreneur, I mean, in the beginning times, there's start, stop, there's, you know, regression, there's failure, there's challenge, and there's, you know, as you kind of go through that stuff, especially in the commercial real estate space. And somebody asked me the other day, they said, well, you know, you're in multifamily. Isn't that residential? And yeah, technically, but it's still a commercial real estate asset. And the biggest thing in this space, if you want to have expansion, if you want to have access to quality opportunities, because most of the deals that are out there are not quality opportunities. They're, you know, they're shiny objects that look great, that don't cash flow, and that have a lot of risk that come with them. And the core component that we've been very, very intentional on developing is our reputation in the marketplace, doing what we say we're going to do. And as we do that, as we prove that to the marketplace, the key stakeholders, the key influencers in the marketplace, not to steal a social media term for the day, you know, those are the people who give us access to the opportunities that, you know, are really can be generational and game changers.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do have some multi-unit properties up here as well, and I associate with different people, and we also do the same thing up here in Canada. But my specialty is really private lending, and it's interesting because people have always asked me, "Hey, why don't you lend here? Or why don't you lend here?" When it comes to hard money lending, and and I'm and I don't know if people always understand, but I always point to this idea of I, I need to have infrastructure in that space, in that province, in that state, wherever we're looking to lend. I need to know that I've got a legal team that I can count on. We've got contractors that you can count on. All of these sorts of things, because you're working by proxy, and I'm not gonna be the one that's gonna be able to save the day if something goes wrong. So you better have the people in place that can go ahead and do that. And so, when you even as you talk about scaling and this kind of idea, you're not going to be able to do that. You're not going to be able to go from 10 a 10 unit to a 200 unit without having that in place. Because if you have to, guys, if you're listening, and Tyler, you need to key in on this. What's the difference between having 20 doors and having, say, 200 doors if you don't have the team in place already when you acquire the asset?
I love that you said that, because problems are gifts to a certain point. And if you are not anticipating or aware of the problems that you would be facing at a certain level, you can and will get crushed. I mean, I'm really glad that you went here with this part of the conversation. If you add a 0 to your, unit count, so to speak, in many respects, that scale, there's a ton of benefits, right? There's a ton of leverage in stepping into that. But in terms of, the infrastructure required to handle a 200 unit property versus 20 is vastly different. I mean, you really need a team who is experienced day in and day out in terms of solving the scalable issues that you have. And, of course, the other thing too is, like, when you think about financing a 20 unit deal versus a 200 unit deal, is vastly different. You're going to be talking about millions of dollars versus maybe $1 million or maybe less. And so the structure of the deal can get much more complex on a larger deal. There are many, considerations to think through as you're designing the capital stack and as you're managing the capital stack, as you're managing your lender relationship. Of course, if you're doing hard money lending, this, and many other people who have utilized leverage as they're growing their wealth, which is obviously a great tool for doing that. You've got to recognize that this is a double-edged sword. And so obviously the issue gets more complex on a larger asset than a smaller asset. In many respects too, there's perhaps mindset barriers to people getting to that point. You definitely want to surround yourself with people who have been there and model that success, because what we're talking about has been done time and time again. So, steal shamelessly and improve. What does the team need to look like? From our perspective, we have a team for asset management. We have a team for finance and accounting. We have a team for legal. We have a team for our marketing department. We have investor relations, because we have many different investors who partner with us. So as we're scaling, the infrastructure is vastly different in terms of the requirement than it would be if we were buying deals just with our own money, that we started with, years ago. So, there's many different things I could go down rabbit holes on, but that's kind of the basics and really the high level.
Yeah. Oftentimes I think that people will ask a lot of the wrong questions when it comes to investing, or they want to know, hey, how do you do this? How do you do that? And I'm thinking, I can tell you that, but that doesn't actually help you. What you really want to know is, and people will ask me questions about the lawyers that we utilize, and I'll tell them, look, you don't want, if you're choosing a lawyer, you don't want a lawyer that's going to help you to get into the deal. You need a lawyer for how to get you out of a deal, right? Like, do you have somebody that knows what the back end, what the bad stuff looks like, what all those things that could go wrong? Because people that can get you into the deal are a dime a dozen in any sort of area, right? They're all over there. Oh yeah, here's what your cab drivers can give you investing tips, tricks, and advice. But the real key is who knows what the back end looks like, and that's the valuable, experience that you've got, knowing all of those tips, tricks, and experience about the contract, about the buildings, how all of those things are happening. And who's kidding who? You probably don't even have half of those, but your team has, a ton of that experience. You're able to leverage it.
Yeah, one of the gifts and problems is that it gives you wisdom so that you can anticipate challenges, right? You can anticipate and design contingency plans. But I think it's always important, and one of the things that's a core component to any of our investments is that we always have the exit strategy in mind, and also contingent exit strategies in mind if certain things happen in the market, if certain things happen with our property, if certain things happen with our team. So it is important to have those and be able to anticipate. I feel like, one of the things I heard recently is that losers react, but leaders anticipate. And when you look at the difference, I mean, there's a vast difference. You're surprised by a problem. If you're surprised by a problem, especially in this space, as you go bigger, then that is a problem. Then you're going to become a loser, because then you have to react and you're surprised, and now you don't really know what to do. But if you anticipate, when something happens, it's, we saw this from a mile away. We knew that there's only probabilities, there's no certainties. And when this probability then occurs and it's a part of your reality, now it's time to enact, the contingency plan. So I think that's important stuff.
Wow. Okay. So Tyler, this is what you're doing. What does this year hold for you? What are you working on moving into this year? I know that you've got a book, I believe, that's out there as well. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you've got lined up for 2023?
So we do have a book, and it's called The Bottom Line. And really what this is all about is increasing cash flow in apartment communities. And so if any of your listeners want to check out that book, it is on our website at cfcapllc.com. It's very insightful in terms of, we give away our playbook. It really is the 10 ways that we go in and we increase cash flow and we transform an asset, similar to kind of what we were talking about earlier in this conversation. And so in terms of what we're working on, we are in a very unique time. We're kind of in a bit of a change in terms of the market cycle. We are going from what has been a historic expansion to a little bit of a correction here. In many respects, we've seen 15 to 20% pricing correction in our market. And so as a result of that, I think there's going to be tremendous opportunities. So really, especially on the latter half of this year, we're starting to see this. We're already starting to see this in our acquisition pipeline, more and better opportunities than we've seen for a few years and really many years. And so as a result of that, our target this year is to grow by about 100 million in terms of new deals. And so with that said, that creates a lot of opportunities for investors and people who want to get to know us and become in relationship with us. So that's one of our big targets. Also Elevate Podcasts is a big part of my focus as well, because I'm super passionate about everything about what we're talking about today: mindset, mind expansion, personal development, because those are the things that have allowed me to transform from being a corporate employee to being an investor and scaling and embracing further adversity and further uncertainty, and embracing the challenge, embracing the problems, and finding the gift in larger problems. So that's a big part of my focus and something that I give to other people. We come out with an episode every single week, and we talk with, world leaders, and we also talk with, New York Times best-selling authors, but we also talk to some of the most prolific investors in the real estate space. So, those are the things that I'm really focused on. And other than that, man, I'm a dad of twins, and things are busy at home as well. So we're having a lot of fun.
That's fantastic. And I actually appreciate that, because what that tells me about you is that you have to understand time management, and you have to understand relationships. There's just something with when you do have kids that you have to get into these different aspects. And if you're not able to balance those things, then all sorts of other things will go wrong. And so it's good to know that you're getting tested on the home front. You're getting tested out there. And let me just ask this final question, because I know that we got to let you go. How do you keep that motivation up? How do you keep iterating and building on your performance? Like, what do you do to keep driving yourself forward like that?
One simple concept, and that's managing inputs. I think the people who are listening to this podcast today are doing a great job of that. They're managing their inputs. They're being intentional on what is reaching this beautiful mind of theirs. And that's one of the things that I'm really intentional for as well. And I am constantly reading books, and I'm constantly listening to podcasts. I'm constantly engaging in relationships that are with others who are future focused. They're focused on doing big things in their life, and not selfishly, but people who are looking to make an impact as well. And so I'm always conditioning my mind for success. And one of the things that I think it was Zig Ziglar who said this, he says, look, we need to take a shower every day. We also need to seek inspiration every day. And so I'm looking for tools, tips, tactics, strategies, of course, to refine our strategies, to refine our approach, to iterate and improve. But a lot of the stuff that I'm engaging in and that I'm conditioning my mind with are things that are saying, you know what, look, problems are gifts. Here's how you can do it. Maybe it's a biography. I'm reading a biography about John D. Rockefeller, maybe the wealthiest individual in history of humanity. And, I'm reading about his trials and tribulations and the problems that he encountered and the systems and the scale that he designed. So I'm managing the inputs, and I'm gaining insight in terms of what is applicable for my life and my journey. And, I read constantly personal development books as well. But I think it really comes down to what are we managing in terms of the inputs, and also guarding the gates of our mind, because there's a lot of negativity out there. There's a lot of doubt and fear and uncertainty and scarcity out there. Like if you turn on the news, you better guarantee that you are going to be bombarded by clickbait every single place. And they understand how to leverage human psychology, because a lot of people are driven to avoid pain instead of, seek pleasure. And, you'll have to understand, well, what is that for you? But when I understand that I'm being, played, and I'm being a part of this game, this larger game that's really pushing me towards a negativity bias so that, they can get clicks and views and all these kind of things, then I recognize, you know what? Yes, I need to be informed, but I also need to guard my mind, because a lot of this stuff is designed to make me feel like things are worse than they are. I can't do this. And if I do, I will fail. And here's all the pitfalls, and here's all the problems that have no gifts in them, and all these kind of things. So it's really about managing inputs.
I love it. I'm not even going to comment on that. I'm going to end with this final question. 2023, what's your one wealth building tip for the listeners? Guys, take this and run with it. It goes coming from the mouth of Tyler Chesser, building wealth in 2023. What is
Stop
that?
trying to do it all yourself, is my biggest thing. And, you are the driver, you are in control. But as a leader, not only of yourself and your future financial position, but you're also a leader of a team. Your team may not exist yet, or it may not be as robust as it needs to be yet, but stop trying to do it all yourself. If you're, even if you feel like you've made a big leap here, make the next leap. Who else do you need in your circle who can help you get to where you want to go? Surround yourself with the right people and stop trying to do it all yourself.
Yes. And guys, if you want to get some more of Tyler, you can find him on LinkedIn. What's the best place to get a hold of you, Tyler?
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great place. Also, our website, cfcapllc.com. Again, I've mentioned the book there. You can find that. You can download that for free immediately. And also you can reach out to me immediately there as well. But also, if you're listening to this podcast, Elevate Podcast with Tyler Chesser, it's all about mindset, mind expansion, personal development. So there's a few different ways to check me out.
Love it. Love it. Guys, just a little bit of mindset for 2023. If you want some more, go check out his podcast. You want to learn more about CF Capital, go check it out. Links in the show notes below. and or beside, whichever place. And Tyler, thank you so much. On behalf of Canada, we do appreciate Kentucky Fried Chicken, but we really thank you for coming on the show today, and we look forward to talking to you again in the future.
Thanks, Neil. I really appreciate it, man. This was a lot of fun.
Thanks. All right, guys, that's it for this week on the Leadership to Wealth podcast. We'll see you again next week.